Hello and welcome to this episode of Aquarium School, brought to you by the Aquarium Vet team. My name is Dr. Rob Jones and I'm one of the members of the Aquarium Vet team, and today we're going to talk about the role that vitamins and minerals play in our fish's health. So in this episode of Aquarium School, we're going to focus on vitamins and minerals. We'll look at what are they, why do fish need them, what do they do, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and also the role of vitamin supplementation. Now, one of the questions, of course, is do we feed our fish a balanced diet? But this obviously depends on the second question, is do we actually know what our fish species would eat in the wild? As we've already discussed, there's 35,000 or over 35,000 species of fish on the planet. We have probably somewhere around the 3,000 species of fish that are displayed in aquariums, whether it's the home aquarium market, hobbyists, breeders, public aquarium. And obviously all of these different fish eat a variety of foods in the wild, so we don't actually necessarily always know what the fish would eat in the wild. So first of all, looking at vitamins, and what are they? They're organic compounds. They're required in a lot of metabolic reactions within the body, from general metabolic processes to part of normal growth and reproduction. And a deficiency of one of the vitamins can produce a variety of conditions, and of course that depends on which vitamin is deficient or missing in the diet. As I've already mentioned, there's a large number of fish species and we don't actually know what their vitamin requirements are. But in a lot of cases, we extrapolate it from the species that have been studied, and this is usually the aquacultured species, so the family Salmonidae, Atlantic salmon, rainbow trout, etc. Catfish, the channel catfish, is a massive industry in the US, and barramundi, Lates calcarifer, which is aquacultured in various parts of the world. Now, there are two main groups of vitamins. There are the fat-soluble group and the water-soluble group. The fat-soluble group includes vitamins A, D, E and K, and because they're fat-soluble, it's possible for them to actually accumulate in the body and create a potential overdose situation if the levels get too high. And as a little aside, in the early years of last century, one of the Antarctic explorers got into trouble and they started to actually have no choice but to eat the sled dogs, and a couple of the party actually died from vitamin A toxicity because of the high levels of vitamin A in the livers of the dogs. So it is possible to overdose with these vitamins and can cause some pretty serious issues. Whereas the water-soluble vitamins, which is mainly the B group, and there's a whole lot of Bs, we know we've got B1, B2, B6, B12, etc., and also vitamin C, these are water-soluble and you really can't overdose with them because any excesses are simply passed out in the urine. Now, one of the things that we often do with the fish that we have is we feed frozen food, and we do this for a couple of reasons. One is that it's readily available. You can get it and store it in the freezer and keep it there for quite some time. Secondly, there are some health benefits because by freezing the food, you're actually decreasing the risk of any parasite transmission because the stages in that fish that's been frozen will be killed by the freezing process. But there is a major problem with feeding frozen food, and that is that you can create vitamin deficiencies. So just looking at a couple of the vitamins, the first one we'll look at is vitamin B1 or thiamine. This is really important for brain function and is also an excellent appetite stimulant. The problem is that a lot of fish in their body contain an enzyme called thiaminase. And what happens is that when that fish dies, that thiaminase gets activated and it quickly destroys the thiamine within the fish's body. So you end up with a fish that's effectively thiamine deficient. And that can occur very quickly within a shorter period of 90 minutes. And then when you feed out these fish, they end up with a thiamine deficiency. And the problem can happen is it doesn't just happen during the freezing process, but if you're feeding out fresh fish, unless they've been eaten within 90 minutes, which is pretty unlikely, you can still get a thiamine deficiency. And one of the things is that these thiaminases are not inactivated by the freezing process. And so the breakdown of the thiamine continues on. And so you end up with this thiamine deficiency issue. The fish that we normally see thiamine is found in is the Scombridae family, which is mackerels and tunas, Carangidae, Clupiidae, Salmonidae, and Cyprinidae. So an awful lot of fish species contain this thiamine and can lead on to a thiamine deficiency if you're feeding these fish to the fish that you have in your display. And these thiaminases are also found in a whole lot of invertebrates. So you'll see them in mussels and clams, so some shellfish, and some crustaceans, shrimps and prawns. So it's very easy if you're feeding a non-commercial food to end up with a vitamin B1 or a thiamine deficiency. And the other thing, of course, is that it's a water-soluble vitamin. So if you're doing a lot of water thawing, which is absolutely not advisable, if you do any thawing, you should do it in a fridge over a 24, 48-hour period. It's possible if you do water thawing that you're even going to wash out what little bit of vitamin B1 may be left. And if you get a thiamine deficiency, you have a CNS problem, a central nervous system problem. So the fish will be having fits, they'll be having unusual swimming behaviour, they'll be spiralling, circling, etc. And all of this can occur because of a thiamine deficiency. The other vitamin, water-soluble vitamin that we want to talk about is vitamin C, or ascorbic acid. It's an excellent immune stimulant. You know, the aquaculture industry has done us a big service by doing a lot of studies on stimulating the immune system naturally without using antibiotics. And vitamin C is an excellent immune stimulant. It also assists greatly with wound healing. And I always supplement any food, and you've got the dose there, 1 gram of ascorbic acid powder per 200 grams of food. You can't overdose with vitamin C, as we said earlier. It's a water-soluble vitamin. It's an excellent immune stimulant, and you want to use as much of it as possible. And it's also, because it's water-soluble, it is one that can be adversely affected during the freezing process. So how do you overcome this problem of vitamin loss? One is to add vitamin supplements, and it's possible to get various powders and things that you can add to the food, like we already mentioned, the vitamin C or ascorbic acid powder, or you use a commercial balanced diet, and there's plenty of these available on the market. And usually they're designed for different fish groups or species, and a commercial balanced diet will have the extra vitamins and minerals added to prevent any deficiencies. The next area we want to look at is minerals, and these are inorganic elements that are needed by fish as components of tissue, particularly the skeleton and the scales. We'll come back to that. Very important for osmoregulation, and we've talked about osmoregulation in another lesson. And they're also important in a whole lot of different metabolic reactions within the body. Generally, it's a bit like the vitamins. They're only required by the fish in small quantities. So we call these micronutrients. You know, we've already talked about the macronutrients, the protein, the carbohydrate, the lipids. Vitamins and minerals are micronutrients because you only need them in small quantities. In a lot of cases, the minerals can be actually absorbed across the gills of the fish, and particularly in marine fish. Obviously, there's much higher concentrations of minerals in seawater, which is really what makes it seawater. And the other thing is that we know, once again, from our osmoregulation, that marine fish also drink in large quantities of seawater every day. Now, we're only going to list these. We're not going to go through. We'll go through a couple of them, but you've got calcium, you've got chlorine, you've got cobalt, copper, iodine, and iron and magnesium. And chlorine is very important for osmoregulation. And then we've got manganese, phosphorus, potassium, and sodium, those two there, potassium, sodium, chlorine, they make up the three that are really important for osmoregulation. So there's a whole lot of different minerals, and, you know, to be honest, these are the same minerals. If you take a human vitamin mineral supplement every day and you have a look at the label, you'll see most of them are pretty much the same. A couple I want to pick out and spend a bit more time on, and that is calcium and phosphorus. Calcium and phosphorus, very, very important in skeleton and bone formation, same as with us. The difference is 99% of calcium is in the skeletal tissue and the scales. So in fish, scales are a very, very important place where calcium is stored within the body. And about 20 to 40% of the calcium is actually present in the scales. And that means that if fish ever go through a period where there's a deficiency of calcium in the diet, those scales actually act as a calcium source, and they can withdraw calcium from those scales in times when they're not getting enough. And calcium is essential for muscle function. If you have a calcium deficiency, you'll actually start having fits or seizures. Very important in the osmoregulation process, and very important in the clotting process that happens when there's any sort of wound involved with bleeding. Now, if we look at fresh water and you've got soft fresh water, you've got low calcium levels, it's possible to have a calcium deficiency if there's insufficient calcium in the diet. So you need to make sure there's enough calcium to not have any problems. Whereas if you've got hard fresh water, which is the high calcium levels, and marine water, it's very unlikely that fish will suffer a calcium deficiency because they're either taking in the calcium across the gills or in through the mouth orally. But if we do get deficiencies of calcium or phosphorus, basically they're going to show up with poor growth rates and also skeletal deformities. And so these are fry that were grown in an aquaculture scenario. They weren't being fed a balanced diet, and you can see that the spine on the bottom fish is okay, but the spine on the upper one is not. It's actually got a fracture of the vertebra, and that's because it was suffering from a calcium and a phosphorus deficiency. Now, iodine has a molecular weight of 53. It does occur in seawater at approximately 60 micrograms per litre, and we will see iodine deficiencies in closed systems, and that can lead on to the development of goiter. And what you see is that you'll have a mass in the neck area, or in some cases in teleos coming out through the gills. And with sharks and elasmobranchs in general, we actually provide a supplement, a vitamin supplement, a mineral supplement. You can see there, that's the one that we manufacture or get manufactured for us, and it's got high levels of iodine in it to prevent that goiter problem. So that brings us to the end of another lesson. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you at other lessons in the future. Thank you.